It's been quite a while since I touched on the behind the scenes of any of the Power Rangers shows. I realised we had gone through the truth behind the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, the truth behind the Turbo movie, Power Rangers Zeo, Power Rangers in Space, and Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, but I never actually touched on the behind the scenes of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers show. So in today's video, that's what we'll be doing. Now, as always, the following information comes from the book Power Rangers Ultimate Visual History. Now, this video is in no way sponsored by or connected to this book. I just genuinely believe it's a fantastic book that all Power Rangers fans should pick up. The majority of facts and quotes in this video do come from this book, but even after you get to the end of this video, you only would have just touched the surface of the great details in the Mighty Morphin chapter of this book. There's genuinely tons of information in there from all 3 seasons, so make sure you pick it up if this is the kind of thing that interests you. Okay, let's get into it. So the first season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers of course combined footage from the Super Sentai series with newly filmed American sequences. But before the cameras rolled, adjustments and changes were necessary to take the show from its original 10-minute pilot episodes onto a 60-episode season. The first thing the team looked at was coming up with some unique filming locations. These included the exterior of Zordon's headquarters, but the command center needed an upgrade from its pilot. Its consoles and technology equipment had been rented for the pilot, so they were recreated for permanent installation with slight changes to the colors and lighting. Neon columns were added, and tiny lights were strung in the background. They were actually Christmas lights that were used for the effect. The pilot's bowling alley set was of course replaced with Ernie's juice bar, somewhere where they could not only have a juice and catch up with Ernie, but also demonstrate and practice their gymnastics or martial arts skills. Sets were then built on a soundstage for the school's interiors. The Rangers of course had to spend most of their time in the school, so the team really tried to provide a good place that kids could connect with by it seeming very familiar. The main difference with these Ranger School sets was the colours. They chose to make them very bright and almost make it look like a comic book, since these were essentially superhero characters. Now there was another very important change from the filming of the pilot episode to the filming of the actual season, and that was of course the departure of Audrey Du Bois, who originally played the Yellow Ranger. Casting director Katie Warren shares her experience of the screen test with potential replacement Yellow Ranger Toy Trang. The day we had our screen test, Trang was so nervous she almost couldn't complete her final callback. There was at least 20 executives in the audition room, and each actor had to walk in one at a time, do their full audition, read in, and present their physical skills. I told Trang she could run in screaming and jump on the audition table in front of the producers and do her karate moves. She not only did run into the room with mighty power, but she actually jumped up onto the table and did full-blown karate kicks. She then got off the table quietly, did her audition, and then walked out of the room. I loved her and was very proud of the fearless approach to her becoming the Yellow Ranger. She was of course cast, but there was actually one more Ranger still to find. A 6th Ranger who would appear well into the run of the show. Jason David Frank had been studying martial arts since he was just 4 years old, and in 1991, at just 17 years old, he already owned several karate schools where he taught both kids and adults. During the pilot auditions, Frank had tried out for the role of the Red Ranger, but didn't quite make the cut. He auditioned again then in '93 for the role of Tommy Oliver, the Green Ranger, who was only supposed to be in a small handful of episodes. Frank was called immediately after his first audition and returned to Saban headquarters. I was waiting in the hallway and it was just me and 15 girls, JDF remembers. I wasn't sure what was going on and started thinking that maybe they don't know if they want a guy or a girl for the role. He was quickly summoned to help out in his capacity as a martial arts instructor. They asked me to work with an actress, he recalls. Sure, I said, let me put a routine together. So I'm teaching her and I'm thinking, man, I hope I get this job, because I'm really working hard for it. What JDF didn't realise, however, was he had already locked in the part. They had actually only been bringing him in to work with actress Toy Trang. Finally, he learned that no other actor had even been called back for the Green Ranger. We'll get back to JDF's involvement as the Green Ranger in a little bit, but for now, let's talk a bit about the changes to some of the other key characters. Again, footage used from the pilot with David Fielding's footage as Zoltar, the leader of the Rangers, was to be used in the show, but with a few updates. Between the pilot and the show's debut, the character had been renamed. Someone had brought up the fact that Zoltar was the name of the arcade game in the movie Big, so they changed it to Zordon. This change may have also triggered the change from the use of droids to Zords, As we all know, another very popular franchise had already coined the term droids. So how exactly did the process of making the show go? Well, the process of putting together Power Rangers TV seasons has remained virtually the same for much of the run of the series. Certainly in the show's early days, the latest Power Rangers season would be based on a Japanese Super Sentai show's previous season. After filming, Toei Company would send the footage to Saban Entertainment. Then the story department would watch all of the episodes and do a breakdown of what episodes and footage was actually usable. Obviously, the main goal was to take out any footage that was clearly shot in Japan. So they would take out anything with a car driving on the left-hand side of the road, or Godzilla-type shots with Japanese extras running in horror from the monster of the week. The main challenge then was, of course, to come up with a storyline that would match the footage that they had ripped. Fortunately, every show had a basic theme or monster, and that's often how the story would be worked out. For example, in an episode featuring the monster Pudgy Pig, who eats constantly, the writers developed a story about a cultural food fair that Bulk and Skull ruin, titled Food Fight, and written by Cheryl Saban. The episode became a fan favourite. Now, this sort of formula is something that I've often battled with. Obviously, I've been a lifelong Power Rangers fan, with the show following this exact formula, but I can't help but wonder what sort of content they could come up with if everything was absolutely original. If the stories weren't limited by existing footage and existing fight scenes, storylines, camera angles, actors, locations. Just imagine if everything was original. I, for one, would really like to see it. Let me know in the comments down below which you prefer. Would you like them to stick to this formula in the future, or would you like to see something 100% original? Let's move on to the monster department. The monsters that Rita Repulsa sends down to Earth to battle the Power Rangers can be animal, vegetable, mineral, or just plain baffling. Toei would send Saban the existing monster costumes from each Super Sentai series to be refilmed for the new footage featuring the unmorphed American actors. After a Sentai season ended, they would send a cargo container filled with monster pieces and parts over to the American crew. Included in the containers were what appeared to be instructions on how to assemble the costumes, but no one on the costume team could read Japanese. So the monsters were taken care of by the aptly named monster department instead of the costume department. When they weren't occupied by a suit actor, the monster costumes were held up by giant stands. It would often take as many as 3 people to get a suit actor or stunt person into a monster costume. Now let's talk about Go Go Power Rangers, the of course iconic soundtrack and theme tune to the first season. The amazing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers power metal theme song Go Go Power Rangers might be one of the catchiest tunes ever written for children's TV. Ron Wasserman, the man behind the song, had already worked with Haim Saban and his team on some of their previous shows before he got this assignment. They were keen on having the word go in the song, because they had such a hit with the Inspector Gadget theme. I think it was their lucky word. Saban gave Wasserman a rough cut of the opening of the show for reference, and the composer got to work. I banged out the theme song in about 2.5 hours, says Wasserman. The next day, Fox heard it and loved it. The composer thinks the popularity of Go Go Power Rangers is attributable to the fact that he wrote it with adults in mind, as well as kids. It came from a real rock and roll place inside me. I think the kids sensed that honesty. He ultimately composed the background music and theme songs for the first 6 Power Rangers seasons. He also contributed new theme songs to Lost Galaxy, SPD, Samurai, and Dino Charge, and original songs for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie and Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. Something we of course have to touch upon is the fighting and choreography. As there was so much of it in this show, it's something we can't skip over. Jeff Pruitt, who holds a black belt in Tang Soo Do, was actually one of the stunt coordinators for the first 3 seasons of the show and for the movie. He was tasked with figuring out a way to choreograph American film stunts and combat scenes that would match the Japanese footage. The footage we were trying to mimic was very specific, 70s era Japanese snap, zoom in and out sort of style, he explains. Pruitt worked with a team of stuntmen and women with martial arts or gymnastics backgrounds to help reproduce the fighting seen in the original footage. The style was similar to that in the Tokusatsu Sentai series, with stiff and sharp movements, but we added our own flavour to it. The stunt and combat sequences needed to be choreographed as fast as the episodes were being written and shot. It wasn't like a film production where you can get 2 weeks to film a fight, says Walter Jones, the Black Ranger. It was like, okay, so in the script today you're going to be fighting in the park. Hey, how about you fight on this park bench? Because his character, Zack Taylor, had his own unique style of fighting, Jones would be a part of the process, getting 15 to 30 minutes to figure out his moves. It was all really improvised and choreographed spontaneously, he says. The martial arts techniques of Tommy Oliver, Jason Lee Scott, and Trini Kwan were firmly rooted in Japanese styles, while Kimberly Hart and Billy Cranston used a fusion of martial arts and gymnastics. But Zack's fighting moves were different, a combination of hip-hop, martial arts, and dancing. and that was something I had to put some thought to and figure out why I was doing what I was doing and how it would be most effective, Jones explains. One move I had was a breakdance swipe, where you do a flip towards the ground and use your feet to sweep the ground and go back into the air. This was an effective way to get 2 or 3 people down, but I would have to come up with how would this work and how would it be applied. Because the show was aimed at such a young audience, the fight creators needed to be very careful regarding the depiction of violence. That was the toughest thing for me, says Pruitt. Recreating fights that followed the Japanese camera moves was easy. What was tricky was figuring out what was going to please the censors. They would give us notes like, tell Jason Frank not to make a mean face. Tell him to smile when he punches that guy in the face. To please the censors, certain rules were established and followed. Never kick or punch anyone in the face. Nobody gets hit in the head, only in the chest. It was commonly do a flip and leap over the camera to avoid hitting each other. Again, this is another reason I would personally like to see some original content, not just aimed at kids, but something where the studio censors can't get in the way, where we get exactly what the creators want to give us. Original locations, original storylines, and of course, original choreography. Now let's get back to the Green Ranger. In episode 17, a new kid comes to Angel Grove. Tommy Oliver is as good at martial arts as any of the other Power Rangers. This catches the attention of Rita Repulsa, who is determined to have her own Power Ranger. She captures him and places him under a spell that turns him into the evil Green Ranger. In the 5-episode story arc, Green with Evil, the mysterious Green Ranger takes it to the Power Ranger team until they become ineffective in battle, even losing their Zords, all part of Rita's plan. At their lowest point, they learn that it's their classmate under the green helmet. But in a final confrontation, Jason Scott is able to release Tommy from Rita's spell. Remorseful and humble by his actions, Tommy is invited to join the Ranger team, becoming the first ever 6th Ranger. Jason David Frank, who plays Tommy Oliver, easily identified with the character he plays on the show. Tommy Oliver was a lot like me, he explains. We both did martial arts, loved life, and wanted to get along with everyone. Frank felt that children could understand his character's challenges as the new kid in town. He was something of a loner, and then he became a leader, to his and my own surprise. Not everyone on the production team actually thought that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was destined for great things. Chip Lynn recalls the day when he and some of the key crew members watched the first episode of the show and were unsure what to make of it. We came out of the conference room, looked at each other and said, we'd better sharpen our resumes. Because it just didn't make sense. A character would get punched in a living room and then, in the next scene, he would land in a forest. Lynn wondered if the young viewers were going to be able to understand the show. But things that are completely illogical to grown-ups make sense in a kid's mind. They're just following the action and having fun with it all. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers premiered on August 28, 1993, broadcasting 5 episodes a week, Monday through Friday, at 7:30 in the morning. Within 3 weeks, its ratings were ranking first among ages 2 to 11. Cheryl Saban says when the show first began to air, it wasn't even in prime time, but kids managed to find it through word of mouth. Soon it would be reaching 4.3 million young viewers, a huge number at the time for that demographic. The last series, live action or animated with numbers that high, was CBS's animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1991. Saban knew it would work. The next thing you know, the show became this mega success, and fights were breaking out in stores for the toys, says Chip Lynn. Everyone involved with the show has their own theory on why Power Rangers was such a huge success. Our show offered an ethnically diverse cast who were all friends and got along, says David Yost. It had everything kids loved, superheroes, dinosaurs and robots. There was something for every kid to identify with, adds Walter Jones. And because the fact that it was a diverse cast, it gave everybody a possibility of being a hero. Zordon actor David Fielding adds, the Power Rangers stood for some great values. For the power of friendship, standing up for each other, having confidence and doing the right thing. It went beyond anyone's expectations, says creator Haim Saban. We've had so many parents write to us saying that this show has created a bond between them and their kids. Their parents look at it on one level, the kids on another. Production manager Chip Lynn remembers that following the initial success of the show, big Hollywood stars were asking to bring their kids to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers set. Major actors were contacting the production office, requesting to be guest stars. All my relatives would call me and ask to get them Power Rangers toys. I had to tell them no because I didn't have any pull, but man, it was fun to be in the right spot where lightning struck, says Chip Lynn. So there we have it guys, that's some behind the scenes content for the first season of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The season that started it all, that gave us everything we have today. Again, if you want more details from this season, go and pick up this Ultimate Visual History book yourself. It's probably available on Amazon, and for me, it's an absolute must if you're a fan of Power Rangers. There is of course details for seasons 2 and 3 of Mighty Morphin, so if you'd like me to cover those in separate videos, please let me know and I'll be sure to do so. Thank you all so much for your time in watching this video today. I hope you have a great day, may the power protect you, and I will see you next time on the 6th Ranger.